I want to start by asking you here about, so we already saw 2 talks about machine learning platforms. And a machine learning platform is an insanely big thing. Like, it can be as complex as, like, there are so many components. But from what we learned from these 2 talks, that we don't need all of these components, right? So we select what we need, we go with this, and then later we can add more and more. So I want to start by asking you in the audience, what kind of components of a platform you already use. So I have a list. I was preparing. I was taking notes like when we saw these presentations. I don't know, like it feels weird sitting. So I took a note of the presentations and I listed possible things that a platform can have. So how many of you have data versioning in your? Okay. It's like 10% or 20%. Yeah. It's more like to start the discussion so you know what we can talk about. Then how many of you use experiment tracking tools? Okay, thank you. Then how many of you use model registry? Probably the same people who use experiment tracking, or else? Okay. How many of you use automatic training of models, machine learning pipelines, with Airflow or GitLab CI/CD or? Okay. How many of you have feature stores? What? Feature stores?
Okay.
Yeah. How many of you serve models with batch deployment, batch mode deployment?
If we need to
web service deployment?
No.
What?
Web service deployment? Okay. How many of you have data monitoring?
Turn the camera to the audience.
Model monitoring?
Sorry, what?
Model monitoring? Like the thing you described?
Yeah.
And finally, let's say, it's probably very few people. So when a model monitoring says there's a data drift or data monitoring says, how many of you automatically retain models after that? Well, yeah. Because there is a thing called maturity model. Like there's a document from Google, from Microsoft, where they describe different maturity levels. Yeah. And the last one, so in case of Microsoft, I think it's level 4 or something like that. They say it's like when you detect a drift or something like that, you automatically retrain a model. And I don't think anyone in this room actually has that. So that's a
Catch him. Who was the guy?
That one
Did somebody raise a hand? Actually?
That one is a bit tricky, though. For example, on our side, we felt those kind of automatic ways can lead to a lot of false positives. So it's kind of difficult for you to automatically actually tune that. It always needs some manual.
I think our governance would be completely against it. Like, they would just say, no, you need to go to the business, and because we have like a whole process of getting something to production involves the business validating, doing like a sanity check on the model before we can release it. So
that makes sense.
I think more important might be, for example, for you to have automatic checks throughout the pipeline. For example, we have that with, I don't consider it drifting, but it's more like data quality, sanity checks, like you have features that make no sense. Those kinds of things, you can put great expectations along the pipe really well.
I think it's good to raise an alert, by the way, from data monitoring to say, okay, it's time for you to consider retraining, but not automatically retrain and redeploy. I would not go for that.
Yeah, because we face the same problem. If we have a new model to deliver leads to the business, they will want to do a sanity check of, okay, but what are the new leads that we'll be obtaining? We want to look at them before to make sure that it makes sense to us.
Yeah, since here we talk about the future of MLOps, do you see this changing in 5 years? Do you see that everyone is like on level 4 MLOps with automatic model retraining after drift detection?
I don't see it.
I think I'm not. I would like to know your guys' opinion since you're not from here, from Portugal. So you have a look into other industries. From what I see inside, I work more as a consultant. So what I see is like there are so first before we go to MLOps, let's see if we have data quality first, right? Yeah. I think there are a lot of issues coming even upstream regarding the data itself. Do you have proper orchestration? Are your pipes? Do you have features in an automatic way? You don't. For example, on our side, what we did before we built our platform was like, the first thing we did was like, let's figure out the needs of our clients. We actually did like a question. We create like how do you say it? Questionnaires that we sent to all the teams to understand where are the pains, and then data monitoring is not the first issue. Let's tackle.
Yeah, I think that's when you look like a more holistic approach to the whole company and what's their priority.
Yes.
But I guess if you would just, let's say we have our AI/ML team, and then we have our own priorities, and so on it. Not to say I don't care about data quality, but I want to push my MLOps maturity irrespective of the changes in the data quality. Whatever the quality comes in, I need to have my versioning. I need to have my pipelines. So I think we can move in parallel to that. But if you have like a budget,
yes.
Again, the client says, "Hey, come and help me." You're gonna look for the biggest bang for the buck, I assume.
Yeah, and I think the business is still on a step before that. It is trying to make them understand that we are helping them with data and we are helping them driving their decisions.
Yep.
And in a 4 or 5 years, to see them taking the hands off the wheel and saying, "Oh, yeah, retrain the model and deploy it automatically without a sanity check from us." It's still a hard paradigm to make the shift to.
Yeah, but I don't think it's also really necessary. I think where it's done, it probably makes a lot of sense. Like fast changing data, like Google, Microsoft, where they see like query changes very frequently. Like there's in 1 week, if there's international events, which we have seen recently or whatnot, you need to update immediately and retrain. And a model for classifying PDFs or something on premise does not have to be retrained every week. So it's per use case need.
So if a delay costs money, like if we don't retrain a model immediately once there is a drift, if it costs money, then we need to retrain.
Because each retraining costs. Yeah. So you need to pay for the training.
Yes.
And so it's like opportunity cost. What if I don't retrain? What am I losing? And so then you figure out, okay, it's better to pay for the training.
Yeah, good point.
Otherwise, you should never retrain. There's never a need to do it. Yeah.
So if, let's say, you're training GPT-4, you don't want to automatically retrain.
After every query, yes.
Yeah.
I would like them.
Okay. So like one of the challenges you talked about is data quality, I think. So the challenges we have right now. And the governance, right? So like we should know like who is responsible for like pushing the model. What are the other challenges right now we have in platforms? Like in general, not maybe because each of you described some of the challenges.
I think that from the developer side, I think you always have to keep in mind that you are dealing with humans at the end of the day. It can be humans with a lot of technical expertise and knowledge and understanding what the platform will bring to them. But you still have to sell them that your way will make their work faster. And I think it's always the first step is to try to make everyone on board that, okay, we have these problems in our ecosystem, we all felt them, and we want to make sure that our platform will fix these issues for you. I think once you make sure that the consumers and the developers of your platform are on board and understand that this will be very positive for their work and this thing that annoys me every day will disappear, they will become much more on board of adopting whatever platform you want to sell them, independently of the technical expertise that you have.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I think it may be obvious for you, because I saw that you addressed this point in your presentation, but a platform should really be an accelerator.
Yes.
And I think it happens that people understand it in a different way. And so then you have this whole DevOps, MLOps team, which slows down the data scientists, where they need to ask literally for every single thing. So the platform should be something which abstracts a certain amount of work from the developer using it and makes it really faster in a safer way. I think that's the goal. And if you're not doing that, you're doing it bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another, like going along those lines, like the DevOps handbook also talks really well about this. Is one of our favorite ones. It's been Foundation. They talk about the people from the platform should be really highly cross-functional. So, for example, in our case, our platform came from developers from the teams, so they understood really well the Node ecosystem. Those are very good developers for you to have, because it's not someone. I prefer someone that is very, for example, an MLE. It's because he can understand really well the entire process. And it's not, for example, a software engineer has another background, but may not understand that well the pains within ML, and that may be, so it needs to be someone that really understands the ML process.
That's the ideal.
The ideal.
You cannot always get it, but that's the aim.
A pain that we're feeling, I think, it's not still clear to me, because I really come from the MLOps background, and we're trying to incorporate data mesh as much as possible, because we believe it a lot. Is like, for example, the feature store says that he wants to reuse features. But something that I'm finding is like, but I think that because we still don't have the proper discoverability as we please, because we're still working on that. But are the features really going to be reusable or not? Is something that I want to really discover, because the data mesh talks about the developers build features for their use case, and they may not really transpose to another. We're still figuring that out, but at least we're enabling in a way that it is.
Yeah, I think that's a very hard part when you, in the development process in data science, you expect like, oh, I have this extract, and then I do this, and in production I will receive something looking like that. But actually you might receive only, for example, what we see is that you have a clean email in development, and then you get HTML in production. Or you get one feature from here, and then you need to grab it elsewhere. So ensuring that you don't have this train serves queue you talked about, I think it's very complex. And the more latency becomes important, the more complex it is. Like, then you need to distribute things, and it can become really difficult. But yeah.
So MLOps a few years ago was a pretty hot topic, but now it seems like the hype is declining, at least from what I see. And mostly because there is a new thing, right? So everyone is talking about generative AI, LLMs, and you might have heard about the term LLMOps, right? So what do you think about that? Like, is it something like, is it MLOps for LLMs, or what is actually LLMOps?
Yeah, for example, we have been experimenting with LLMs, and I think as all new technologies, you always want to first try and do a use case as quickly as you can, and worry about the MLOps side later, because you want to understand how this tool works, how you can use it in your company, and what advantages it brings to the business. But once again, after the first few weeks of development, you understand, no, okay, we have to find ways to monitoring how our modeling production is serving. We have to find ways of ensuring that we have the same data that we're using to train the LLM, once again reproducible later, so we can identify why this weird answer came about. And you will inevitably end up feeling those pains and going back to the basics. Let's think about MLOps once again to apply to this LLM. Let's try and fit and produce a new model to monitor all of this.
I think the foundations is the same. I would make the same architecture for LLM ops, but each block would be, when you go into it, it would be much different and much more complex. I know, for example, that when you are serving LLM models, there is like the whole architecture. You need specialized servers. Also, in terms of like, there's, I think on Bento ML on the website they have a nice analysis why they built something custom and didn't use, for example, Fast API. Exactly for having larger models and decoupling like the protocol, I should say, the network part from the computation part, so that they could be like, scalable independently and so forth. So, I mean, it's like analyzing an Excel file and a terabyte of data. Of course, you need a different infrastructure, different tools, different everything. So, but the principles of data quality remain the same. The principles of versioning code and everything. What, now you're not going to commit your code because it's an LLM? I don't understand that. So, obviously, the fundamentals remain.
So all the building blocks we discussed, and when we talked with the audience, so all of them stay the same with LLMOps, right? It's just
that's my opinion.
They could be a little bit different, right?
Yeah. Or a lot different.
But
when you dig into it,
yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I just want to see if we have more questions. So LLM ops and MLOps, they are quite related, right? So it's just like a sort of subpart of MLOps.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do you think, like with LLMs, like there are not so many actually things we can solve with, but it's so hot, right? So do you think like this hype of LLM ops will stay with us like in the next 5 years, or?
I would like to have your take as well. Regarding market share, I'm not sure. Like, for example, I think a lot of use cases, at least in the industry here in Portugal, I still see that tabular data has a lot of market share. I think that Power BI has a place. I think usually companies start from there. I'm really excited to see where the hype goes as well. But I still think that there are a lot of use cases, and maybe even the most profit comes from our main fraud detection, etc. All of those use cases that are mainly even classical ones. Yeah. But yes, of course, there are a lot of use cases that can generate a lot of business value as well with this. But yeah, I don't think we shouldn't forget all of those as
definitely.
well.
It's not like there's no more classical machine, there's no more statistics just because you have LLMs, I think. I think it's a missed opportunity for many,
So it's like when we need to think like if we need machine learning at all, right?
Yeah.
Then we try to solve it with classical machine learning, and then with deep learning, and then.
But that was always the approach. I mean, whenever I was teaching somebody, data science or something, I say start with a baseline model. Exactly. Start with something very simple, and not just say, "Oh, I'm very excited about this. Let's cram it into everything, into a refrigerator or whatever." But I think also currently it's definitely, I think, like a gold rush, gold fever period, after which we will have an extinction of many startups. And honestly, I'm completely I'm diving under, ignoring the waves on the surface, dealing with the classical machine learning right now. And I have colleagues, data scientists, which are experimenting, so our company is experimenting with Gen AI. But I would rather wait for it to stabilize a bit. And otherwise, if you pick one vendor tomorrow, he's either bought or out of work or what happens. I think it's too unstable at this moment.
But I also think that there will be a lot of companies that will fall within that trap of gold rushing and trying to. We just see LLMs because you have management coming. Oh, I just read this amazing thing about ChatGPT. Make me a model, use a business case. And for certainty, they will be prioritizing these approaches with LLMs and foregoing the other business cases that are already on track or being implemented. Yeah. And I think that maybe in a couple, 2 or 3 years, they'll understand, LLMs are bringing advantage, but we also have a lot of traditional business use cases that will bring a lot of value.
Which are much more explainable. By the way, the algorithms, simpler algorithms are simpler to explain and everything.
Once the business starts to understand that we cannot explain them why the LLM is behaving in a certain way, they will start, if you cannot explain me, I don't feel as comfortable with it.
If you're talking about fraud detection and everything, nobody's going to play with it. But there was an interesting graph by our speaker Tiago yesterday, where he showed how the crypto fever went down, how the AI fever went up. And it was like, is it the same people? Is it the same people that just switched boats, So we should be careful, I would say, about Gen AI. Also, you have seen many startups which start big with some idea and then what's the name? Photoshop just cancels them by making a new feature in their tool. And so I think the big players are the ones which have the most leverage and which just with a click, with a snap of fingers can implement a feature which somebody can struggle for months and then just cancel your whole business. So
what I'm also thinking is how can we use LLMs in order to produce better ML platforms? I think that's also maybe, for example, something that I would see useful would be for our developers to ask to some chat, hey, I need data around these kind of sources. For example, information about calls of my colleagues from the client support. Oh, go check this data product. Or these features on the feature store. That would be also something.
I think as a retrieval and summarization engine,
for example.
I think that's amazing. I have many ideas. For example, in our company, this service hotline, service support tickets. I think that's a great use case where you can analyze all the previous incidents and say, hey, what does this incident look like? And how was this previous incident of this kind solved? And then you can have a person doing the hotline having this AI assistant, which would help him resolve the issue very fast. So definitely I like it, but I'm a bit let's wait.